So hi, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the New Again podcast. I'm your host Stephen Jakes and thank you for joining us. And in this episode, we will be discussing the minefield regarding lease car returns or lease vehicle returns. Now, whether that is for personal or business lease return. But before we get into the depth of the information, I'd like to introduce our resident guru himself, the one and only Gary Wray. Now, Gary's been involved in the industry for almost 33 years and has a wealth of knowledge and is also a BVR LA trained inspector. And so there's a lot of knowledge around this particular topic around lease returns. So let's introduce Gary. Hello, Gary. How you doing, mate? And thank you for joining us. How's things?
Yes, very good actually. Yeah, just to remind you, it's episode 2. Don't mind putting that in. Very good, thank you.
Yeah, great. So we're going to be talking about lease car returns today, and I know firsthand of the complexities and the difficulties and all the misinformation around lease car returns. So just you know, off the top of your head, just give us a general synopsis about the overall topic and what we're going to cover in this podcast.
So most people don't think about what they're going to do with their car when they've got it. You know, even when they're buying it, they don't know when they're going to sell it. So often you'll find that they've signed up with deals with leases where you are going to keep it for 2 years or 3 years.
Which is becoming very popular now with people.
Yeah,
as well.
And there's 4-year ones, but yeah, you have an agreed term, and it could be a PCP. There's another one there, but just a different way of paying for the cars. But so it's normal, really, even when people buy a car, not to think about what's their exit plan. So normally you're thinking of your exit plan when something happens.
Yeah.
So you're into week 3 of driving around in your new lease car, and then somebody, inadvertently scuffs it, or you get a stone chip or something, and then maybe a scuff wheel in which you let yourself off, and then, it's not until a little bit later that you start to work out that I wonder if the lease company are okay with that, or I've got to give this back, and as it goes, and then you think, I've only got a few years to go, don't worry about that at the moment.
Because they tend not to really say anything when they give you the car about those things,
well,
don't they? I mean...
No, it's not intentional. They're trying to get you into the car. You love the model.
Yeah.
You're asking them 50 questions about the car. The last one is, do the wheels scrape easy, or what's going to happen if they do? And most of the time, you're looking at how much the deal is, what it is per month, whether it looks good on your drive, does it give you miles per gallon, and does it fit your image?
And in your mind at that time, you're not even thinking about having an accident or scratching
or a scuff or anything like that. So of course, obviously the lease company want it back in reasonable order, but there are a set of guidelines out there that are set by the BVRLA, which is an independent body which kind of set out the rules for what's acceptable and what isn't. So you might find if you looked in your glove box, which nobody ever does today, you don't even know what's in there.
Only at winter, get me scraper out.
Yeah. And also,
my glove box visits once every 12 months.
You go in your glove box the same amount of times as you go under the bonnet.
I lost that 5 years ago.
Is there a pen in there?
Yeah,
Can I quickly write a Christmas card out in the dark, or a birthday card? And nobody these days knows how to pull the bonnet. Never mind look under there.
Yeah.
But not the lease return bits, but very relevant to under the bonnet. I mean, yes, you should be checking the oil regular, but I mean, modern cars now don't seem to need that much. So maybe the only time you'd even lift the bonnet would be to, put water in your squirter thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's not squirting.
Yeah, exactly.
And even then, oh my God, it's not squirting. Maybe it needs a service.
Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So, I mean, that's a good overview. So we're going to start by going through probably 10 or 12 different areas and questions which are common questions that you come up with, and information that will help the listener when it comes to returning either their business return or their personal return, lease return.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we'll start off with the first question, and that is, what if I have a company lease car?
Yeah.
Whether it's a big car or a small company car, what do we need to know about that?
Right, okay, so different companies have got different sets of guidelines, and then you've got the leases guidelines. So it can be a little bit more tricky, but here's a couple of bits of advice that will help you. First off, if you're with a big company, then you will have a fleet manager, and that fleet manager person will know a lot more than you do about what goes on when the cars are returned. If you're a small company, then it might be one of the bosses that deals with them, or somebody who deals with the purse strings, basically, and they may have leased cars already, and they may have had one or two experiences. And to be honest with you, most of them, they're limited with what they know. A fleet manager will know a lot more because, of course, that is their job role. So let's start with the fleet manager one. The bigger, the person who's managing, let's say, 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700, 800 cars. They'll be used to getting calls from drivers who've had charges. Now, sometimes the charges, let's just reword that a little bit just to sort of get to the grips with that.
What is the charge?
Well, okay, so you're a fleet manager, you've got cars coming and going on and off the fleets. Most of the time, the car will be collected from their employee's house. The fleet company, the lease company will collect the car, drop the new one off, or sometimes they'll drop it off at a dealership, wherever the car might be. So the car will then go back to usually an auction or a place like a compound, whereby it's then inspected, and then they'll decide whether or not they accept it, and whether the few scuffs and scratches and dents and bits and pieces are acceptable, or whether they're not. And if they're not acceptable, then they'll then flag the car. There'll be, and then there'll be a set of charges go down against that car, and they'll send them back, those charges back to the company that leases the car. Now, sometimes if you're a company on a company umbrella, you'll be leasing the car yourself, and your company will be giving you an allowance, but there'll be a lease deal with that company. So I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but I'll bore everybody who's on a personal lease about this bit. But how it basically works is sometimes it's your lease, you just get a discount through the lease company, and it's done at a blanket deal. So you still are dealing directly with the lease company. So the latter means that it might just be the same as a personal lease. If it's doing the other way around, in other words, the company leases the cars, you drive the car for the company, then the company may get that bill back. And normally a company will have in your contract of employment will have a clause in there about the way you manage your car, and it will be usually something like, you manage your car, it's your company car, but you need to fall within the BVLRA guidelines. In other words, you can't send it back with a great big dent in it. And so, obviously the lease company need to sell that car. So this outlines something else which is important to all of you listening. If you've got a lease car or a PCP, the lease company won't get the profit until they've sold the car. So they're going to provide a car for you and a service for 2 years. And I don't just mean servicing, I'm talking about being on the other end of the phone when you can't find a service place or something. Yeah. And, there's a whole load of reasons why you need the lease company. If you're leasing the car and you want to extend the lease a little bit longer, or loads of reasons. The tyres.
Well, it's just basically any issues that come up.
So you're buying that service.
Contract,
So you're buying that service for 2-3 years. Most of them are 3 years. And then the lease company takes the car back. Usually they sell it. And then once they've sold it, let's use an example. So a 30 grand car, you have it 3 years. They've still got to get 9 grand back, for it to work for them. And the 9 grand, usually their profit is within that 9 grand. So all their costs and everything else, that 9 grand is what they need to take the profit after 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's quite a thing for a lease company. It's not money for nothing. They're providing that car and that money on a risk, and that you're going to look after it. And then when they do sell it, they need to get a respectable figure for that.
They need to maximise the sale.
Yeah,
to get the most money that they can for that in order to make it.
They've got to get an acceptable number. I mean, it's a figures thing. It's not so much about, like you might be doing, trying to sell your car the weekend. The car will be auctioned and it will be sold at the value it's worth, and if it's in reasonable condition, that will be the price. And obviously, the dealers who are buying the cars, then reselling them, most of the time that's how it works at an auction. The dealers will be wanting to put that car up for sale for the next user. So again, the dealer will be looking out for a car that's in reasonable condition, because he doesn't want to put a car on their site that's for sale with dents and scratches round, so they'll need to do a certain amount of rectification. So the price of the car and the value of the car will depend on its condition, and a lot more. There's a lot more emphasis on the physical condition of the car than there ever was, and it's always going to be that way now because cars are becoming a lot more reliable. Yeah. So that it's gone are the days when you're looking under the bonnet and see whether the alternator and start motor work. Your old dad used to go and fix it and tighten up the fan belt and all that. Nowadays, it's now they're looking at the condition of the car. Has it got dents? Has it got scratches? Can I put that on my car for sale? Yeah. Or otherwise, have I got to spend another 2 months?
So bring it back to the fleet manager. So the fleet manager is looking after these cars. He's maybe looking after a whole fleet of businesses. But what if you're dealing with a one-to-one?
Right. So if you're returning the car, we'll come to that. If you're returning it and it's your lease, but you're in a company, then treat it like it's a personal lease. What I would do is I'll come back to. I'll still think it's worth talking to your fleet manager because he or she will be a lot wiser about what's gone on in the past mainly, and they'll be able to give you a lot more pointers. And sometimes they'll have a look at the car with you, or you might be able to email them a couple of pictures and say, look, I'm going to give my car back. You've already returned 20 to that company this year. What do you think? And they most of the time will help you because you're asking them before the problem arises. It's they're used to people calling going, that wasn't on there. I don't want to be charged.
And it also removes any grey areas of when actually do return the car. At least you've both got clarity either way because it's been advised one way or the other that this is okay and it's not okay.
Yeah, I mean you can't expect a fleet manager to manage every car. No. So they're just going to give you some basic advice, and most of the time it is what I'm about to tell you. But at the same time, they will have had some personal experiences, and they'll be able to say, "All wheels do," whatever it is they know, and a little bit of that knowledge. And also, you might be able to call them back should you have got a big bill, and you suddenly think, "God, I didn't expect this." You might be able to call them back and say, look, I've got this big bill. I called you before. Would you be able to help with this? Maybe they're, being unreasonable or not. Most of the time, by the way, the lease companies aren't unreasonable. I'll get to that a bit further down the line. So that's if it's a fleet. So let's just define what we're talking about here. If you're a personal lease person, you lease the car directly from a dealership and do a lease, or directly through a lease company. You've been online, you've got your lease company. It's you and the lease company. What I'm just talking about now is you work for a company. The company lease a fleet of vehicles, and it's a company car, but it's leased.
Yes.
And a company car driver will be under a different set of you've got a double set of rules here because I'm working for the company. So that car gets damaged while I'm working for the company. Then I'm insured by the company, maybe the company insurance. But also I'm expected by the company to keep it to a respectable standard. So, and that standard, the company will usually make reference to the BVLRA, which is the company that's, they've got the body that set the standard for fair wear and tear. Okay, so let's say at the moment what we're talking about is ask your fleet manager how it all works. What do they know? Now, there'll be some poignant questions that I'll mention later that are important to you, whether or not it's a company or not. But you may find that your fleet manager will know the answers to these questions. So we'll come to that further down the line. So let's go to the personal side now.
Yeah, let's go to the personal lease. So you've got a personal lease, you've got a scuffed bumper, or you've got a couple of scratched wheels on the couple of scratched alloy wheels.
Yeah.
What's the process, and what would you advise with that?
Right. Okay. So most people come to us with a scuff wheel or a dent or something. They ring us and go, "Hi, yeah, I've got to give my car back and I've got a scuff wheel." And then they'll say, and that's the reason that's triggered the response. You've got, "Oh my God, will they charge me? Won't they? What do I do? I've damaged my car a bit, or and there's all kinds of things. Oh, it wasn't me that did it, or I was doing it, during business or whatever. All these things happen. But here's some first off advice about that. Most people only know damage between the height of their knee and the height of their shoulder and the wheels. So if you think you've got a scuff on the wheel and a dent somewhere, I can guarantee you this, that it will be somewhere between the height of your shoulder and your knee and or the wheel, right? So everywhere else doesn't disappear. What happens is that it's just a psyche thing, that you think that you know your car. And what also happens is that you've got this scuff on the bumper and you think, oh, well, if I put that right, the whole car's right. and actually also think there is nothing else, because I've seen a tiny little dent around the other side, and somehow that qualifies in your mind that there's nothing smaller than that. Because if I can see something that small, there can't be anything else on there, and if it's any smaller than that, it should be acceptable. Yeah. So there's this subliminal psyche, whatever you want to call it, thing that's going on inside people's minds, that they know their car, and I can tell you from experience, they absolutely don't. Okay, and unless, and there's probably 1 in 1,000 people out there, and actually probably I'm exaggerating. Yeah. I mean, well, there's probably 1 in 10,000, really, where I'm coming from, that actually really do know their cars, and partially the reason is that you've got to be one of these anal people that clean cars weekends. Anyone who's listening out there that knows what a clay bar is may actually qualify as somebody who actually knows what their car. If you don't know what a clay bar is, then you don't know your car. Yeah. I can tell you now. So if you know what a clay bar is, you can switch off right now. Okay. But for those of all of you that don't, then you don't know your car. Okay. So what we're talking about now is there are things that a lease company's looking for. One of them could be a locking wheel nut. Yeah, and most people wouldn't even know where that is or what it is. It's a little thing that goes on the wheel bolts it's like a key, and it allows you to take the wheel off so that nobody else can take the wheels off. And it normally fits in a little pocket in the boot. And most people don't ever see it or touch it, but it's been touched and seen probably 4 times in the 3-year lease. Yeah. And that little key is to get the wheels off, because when they're doing servicing, most of the time they need to get the wheels off. So it won't even be you that's touched it. Most of the time it will be a mechanic or a car, tyre people, or, it certainly isn't, it could even be a kid that's opened up your glove box, been in there, someone else has been in there looking for a pen, maybe. But, sometimes the locking wheel nut's in the glove box. But, a lease company will be checking for that, because otherwise you've got to try and machine the wheels off. It's a very important key. Most recharges for that are either, my experience is either £500 as a recharge, or I've seen recently a couple of recharges for only 120. But either way, £120 for a little nut thing that happens. And let me tell you where they are if they're not where they should be. Okay, because most of the time this is where we find them. You lift up your boot carpet, you've either got a little kit there, and occasionally you won't even have a locking wheel up, but even if there is no spare, they do want to get the wheels off, and so you got these alloys, and the tyres on them are worth quite a lot of money, so they don't nick stereos anymore, but wheels can be stolen. So
what are the common types of cars that do have locking wheel nuts? I mean,
anything with alloy wheels.
Okay.
So all of them, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a thing that looks like a wheel nut, but not a wheel nut, And it goes on your wrench, and it undoes one of the bolts. So, but it usually goes in a little pocket in the boot, so you then take that and get your wheels off. Sometimes, here's where we're talking about now, is that underneath underneath that felt bit or whatever, then there could be a recess, and the person who's changed your wheels may not have quite put it back properly, and then it ends up rolling around under the spare when you've braking and accelerating. That's wandered off somewhere. So so of course an inspector might have a good look. Don't expect them to be looking for half an hour in the rain. But, they'll look where it is. They'll look in the glove box. They might look in the centre console. But then where else you look? There's pockets all over cars these days, and it could be anywhere. Your responsibility is that locking wheel nut is available. It's readily available. So even a locking wheel nut. So there you are, standing there with us saying, hi, I've got my scuff on my wheel and I've got my scuff on my bumper, which actually don't really matter. I'll come to that in a minute. And the locking wheel nut is actually wandering around under the spare wheel, or maybe in some, obscure place where it shouldn't be, and certainly not anywhere some.
And that holds a much, and that's going to be a more heavier penalty, and is more important than the other.
Absolutely, yeah. And you haven't even started yet. I mean, this is not nothing to do with between the knee and the shoulder. You're already focused on.
You're already £500 down, and you just turned up with by just parking the car and getting out.
Yeah. And I'm not here to frighten everyone. It is real, But at the same time,
people need to know this, because I don't hate to think how many people have been burnt from that over the years.
Well, yeah, Okay, so they do, and I've seen it happen. We had one, we did inspection just 6 months ago, and the guy came back because he bought his son's car back and told me the story of his. Yeah. And we'd inspected his a couple of months previous. And he said I got an email straight after the car had gone. I signed a handheld computer thing, and he said I didn't really know what was signed, but the guy just said, sign here, take the keys and everything. And he said I did that. And then he said they emailed me back the bill straight away. And he said I got a locking wheel nut on there. The locking wheel nut was in there. We checked it. You took a photograph because in our process we take a photograph of it. We'll tell you about that later. So he said I phoned the driver and made him stop and said, can you get out and rectify that? And then I went, what? And I thought, well, how did you know the bloody driver's number? This guy who's collecting his car, well, you got his number? He said, yes. I said, how do you know that? He said, because he phoned me to tell me he was going to be late. So then, of course, I phoned him and said, hang on, you've just taken my car away. The locking wheel nut is in the car. I know because I've checked it. And, of course, the guy got out the car at the side wherever he was and found it and then put it back and rectified it, and then he managed to reverse that. So now we're with his son's car now, making sure the locking wheel nut was in there.
Absolutely.
It's one of the first ones on the questions that we asked. So, okay, so now we're at, where were we? We're talking about bumpers and
well, we're talking about personal lease cars and the fact that most people will turn up and, like you're saying, they'll have a scuffed bumper or some scratched alloy wheels. And you're saying that most people are only aware of the damage between their knee and their shoulder, and there's other areas of the car that ultimately will be damaged and they're unaware of.
Yeah.
And then these are these specific areas I would imagine that there is damage, and then later on when you return the car and they haven't been rectified, it can come back and bite you in the backside and be charged.
Yeah. Okay. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So let's go to what So let's say I know my car, and that's probably what many people come and say. I know my car, and I've spoken to the Dent man, and I've spoken to the wheel guy, and the mechanic says it's going to be okay. So where?
Okay,
where does that stand?
All right. So now we're at this scenario where you know your car, you don't. We just told you you don't. Okay, in the nicest possible way, we'll come to that. But unless you know what a clay bar is. Okay, so we're back on that. So your mechanic's going to see a car from a mechanical point of view. And so, like a decorator looks in a house when he's buying it, it needs decorating. And, so will a brickie, so I can build some brickwork. We all do it, we've got our own angle.
What you're trying to say, it's a bit like asking an electrician to tell you whether the plumbing needs to be fixed.
Yeah. A mechanic.
They both work on buildings, but one specialises in electrical stuff and one specialises in plumbing.
And the same as asking people directions. They want to help, and genuinely they think they know, and I'm not telling everybody in the whole world that they don't, but from my experience I can tell you that most of them don't. Most of them actually don't have a clue what they're talking about. And it makes me laugh because people say, my mechanic says, and I think, right. Well, what did he say? Well, he started it up, revved it up,
Yeah, exactly.
Or he had a look at it, and he's now looking between his shoulder and his knee.
Yeah.
So,
and then probably hasn't even looked for the locking wheel nut either.
He probably knows what one is, because he takes wheels off.
Yeah.
But he's not going to know whether he got a bird's mark on the roof, or he's not going to know. And a bodywork person, to be honest, a bodywork person, a body shop piece of people, they would just look at the bodywork, and they're a kind of closer to the problem, because the vast majority of things we're talking about, not locking wheel nuts, but the vast majority of recharges are bodywork. Yeah. There are one or two others out there, and I need to give a couple of quick pointers to anyone who's listening right now. The spare key is another one. They're two maybe £300-400 sometimes, because they're quite a complex bit of kit. And a dealer's found a wonderful way of charging overpricing for a key that only fits your car.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately £200-300 for a spare key. So, you've left it on the wife's key ring, or it's in the kitchen drawer, or I don't know where it is, but you need to find that, and that's something else that needs to be addressed. So, a mechanic or your salesperson or your your dent guy or your body shop, most of the time they don't cover that. They're not going to.
Yeah.
They're thinking
they're only really specialised in their particular field.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So okay. So now I'm telling you why your car's okay and it's not. Now I'm telling you you can't go to a mechanic or a dent man the dent guys usually will look around the car for dents and go, you'll get charged for that one and you won't get charged for that. If you asked a dent man what a BVLRA guideline book was, he probably doesn't know. Yeah. So he doesn't know the rules. He just maybe knows, as he's gleaned over some time, that a dent in a panel is chargeable or not. And by the way, some aren't, because even if they're unacceptable, you might fall under the threshold. And we'll get to the threshold in the next few questions.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say last time I returned a car. So let's say I've returned my car before, and it was okay. It was all right.
Yeah.
And so what's the
the
obstacles there?
I hear that.
I've spoken about last time and it was all right.
Yeah.
Or
my friend returned their car and they'd seemed in good condition. So now we're judging their car, looking at it from 100 yards away.
Yeah.
And then your car, and you're saying yours is like that, or your old
My
car.
colleague at work, he
sent
his back.
Yeah, and his was fine.
Yeah, his was fine,
and all that. So okay. So the answer to that is that you might have got lucky. It might just be that your car was okay, and maybe the locking wheel nut hadn't fallen down the back of the spare wheel. Maybe there wasn't a bird's mark on the roof. Maybe there wasn't a crack in the bumper, and maybe there isn't on this time. So you could just do that, give your car back, and you might be lucky again. Some lease companies are a little bit more flexible, and sometimes there's a threshold. So you could have a scuff on the wheel, you could have 2 scuffs on the wheels, it's obvious they're there, and the lease company might not charge you, even though it's outside the fair wear and tear guidelines.
Yeah.
We'll address that now about that, the threshold. So most lease companies will have a threshold. What I mean by that is a figure that they have in their artillery, if you like, as to what they're going to charge if it goes over that figure. So let's word it in a different way. So let's say their threshold figure was 200 quid, right? So you've got a scuffed alloy. Typical recharges, by the way, on a scuffed alloy are anything between 60 and 80 quid. So any of you guys rushing off to get your alloys done,
so if you've got 2 scuffed alloys, that would roughly be 160 quid. You're within the threshold and they wouldn't...
you won't get charged.
Yeah.
There's a very good chance you won't.
Yeah.
One thing about the alloys, just a sidetrack here, to go and get those alloys repaired is that sort of numbers. If you can get it done for 40 quid, then I'd suggest you have a look again, because the likelihood is, you've got a very good chance, unless somebody's doing it because they're friends or something, then, 60 or 80 quid or 100 quid is a respectable price for getting an alloy wheel done. So the recharges are going to be like that. And just while we're on that subject, lease companies aren't in the business of overcharging people. Not in my experience. Occasionally I'll see something that occasionally you might get an agency in the middle and they're near the mark. You think, well, that's, I see a lot of recharges because it's part of our business. We want to see what people get charged and what they don't. So occasionally we'll get a call. Most of the time we get a call from people say, hi, can you inspect the car? They've been and told me, I've got all these, I've got the bill. And occasionally the lease company will send out an inspector, tell them what it's going to cost them and let them have a chance to put it right or argue or whatever they want to do. But so we find out a lot of these charges. So just while we're on the subject, a scuffed alloy is not a big worry. There's only a couple of reasons why we might recommend you repair scuffed alloys.
Yeah.
So we'll come to that. So the threshold, basically, a couple of £100. Now, just while we're talking about that, if you forgot that spare key and you left that spare key, on the wife's key ring, then you get a bill back. The spare key could be 250 quid. So you're straight over that threshold. So then they're going to charge you for the spare key and then the scuff on the alloy, the other scuff on the other alloy. So and a few other things. You could get 600-700 quid charge because you forgot the £200 key.
Yeah.
So if you put the key,
they're going to include all the other prices and then lump it all in and then give you a bill.
Yeah, the same way. If you get pulled over by the police and you've got a back light out, and you genuinely didn't know, or you did know, but a copper's not going to sit there and write the book out and everything else just for the back light. If then they get out and find out...
You've got bold tyres there. And
that's it.
Then
they're going to go, bold tyres, whatever. And
no insurance, and look, there's a warrant out for your arrest. You know,
Are you referring to something that might have happened to you, Steve? So if you're going to go over that threshold because of the spare key, it's bloody banana. So that's a big one. So the threshold. Some lease companies occasionally don't have a threshold. They will charge you £26 for a broken number plate, but most of the time they don't. They don't want all the admin and everything else.
Okay, so moving on. So what are the big things then for people to worry about?
Right, big ones we see are
previous repairs,
previous body repairs. Incorrect previous body repairs. So they don't know. A lease company's getting the car, right? So the rules are you have to give it back with no obvious signs of repair. They might be obvious to you, they might not be obvious to you, but if it's been to a body shop and it's a respectable body shop, most of the time repairs are good. But they're not always good. You could have claimed, people say, "Oh, I've claimed on the insurance, so it must be right." Well, sometimes these body shops are working to a price. Sometimes these guys working on big bonuses to try and get the work through the door. Because when you were shopping around for insurance trying to get the price down, then at the same time that insurance company's trying to find a blanket deal with a body shop that's trying to get the price down. So consequently, you might have something that might not have been rubbed down as much as it should be. You can see filler through a door or misaligned panels we see. And we see an awful lot of work where people have got it done by their Uncle Fred. And
tried to do it themselves.
Well, and the big one, I'll tell you one of the big ones out there is this smart repair thing. And it's a mistake if you're a fleet manager or a business owner now advising people to go and get smart repairs done. Again, going back to what we were talking about before, a smart repair technician sees things from a smart repairer's point of view, and normally, a crude way of putting it is that if you only have a hammer, every job's a nail. So let's explain what I mean there. So you go to your smart repair guy, you phone him up at the place, seen him go past in his van. I do smart repairs, Dent, scuffs, Wizard, whatever he's got, and he's round the dealerships every day doing bits and pieces, and there's no real consequence apart from he's answerable to the retail buyer who doesn't always see the difference between a cloudy panel and one that isn't. So the dealer is not holding him accountable to the BVLRA guidelines. What he's doing is saying, does that look all right? Can I sell it? So and unfortunately, you think that a smart repair is going to be the solution to things. And actually, it can be worse than the solution, because then you've got a scenario where somebody's gone to the trouble of paying somebody to come round and fix the bits and pieces, the dents and scratches, who then gets charged from anyway because it's a substandard repair. Yeah. And a smart repair person will often make a recommendation to do something and say, well, I'll do my best, I'll get it good, what do you think they'll notice and all that crap? Yes, well, it's 199 instead of 599. And of course, you pick the 199. I'm only giving it back. It tells me, I can get it. I mean, there was an advert which made me laugh a few years ago in the back of the BVLRA guideline book. Get smart repairs done. Now, by the way, we do smart repairs, so I'm not saying anything bad about smart repair guys. If they do the job properly, that's fine. But there is also a limit to what a smart repair can do. They've got a small spray gun and small limits.
I think what you're saying is if you're getting a substandard smart repair, not only going to pay for the smart repair, but when the car goes back, you're going to have to pay for that to be
done properly.
Yeah.
Or a substandard body shop.
I think that's really what you're in the context of it. That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, and the same with the body shop. If you get it done down a bumpy road, then you got a chance of getting charged again. And to be fair to the lease company, they've got to make a charge blind. They've got to look at the door and wonder whether or not that should have had a new door. Yeah. Whereas if they're looking at a dent on a door, then at least they can see whether it's a dent or not. So, of course, they have to say new door. So you could end up with a much bigger charge than you might have got had you have given it back with a dent. Yeah. So usually I'll just highlight where I think smart repair guys need to be. It's scuffs on bumpers, maybe the touch-ups, buffing, scratches. There is a place in the marketplace for a dent guy, a smart repair guy. We're not ruling them all out, but they need to be in their context.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so that's great. So what's the best way to deal with your car then? So what's the best way for
so we told you all the things you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
What should you do?
do?
All right, so first off, you might be listening to this now, you're on the home straight now, you've got to return it in a month. But at the same time, you've got to get your next car. So I'll advise you from the beginning. First off, check your car when you get it delivered properly. If it's brand new, most people are leasing a car, check it properly. The last thing you want to do is get charged for something that was on there when you got it. So second off, you need to make the effort to clean your car yourself. That's a very, very good way of measuring your own damage and what you're doing. Whether it be a company car or not, if they give you an allowance to clean it, if they don't, then roll your bloody sleeves up and start cleaning it weekends, and that's a massive thing, because then you see a little scuff or a mark on it, you think, oh, I did that, it's not, you're not finding an accumulation of them over the course, and maybe the edge of a door, you can get the touch up and order it online or go to the dealer and touch it in before it goes rusty. So you need to treat the car like it is yours. After all, really, it is yours. We don't own the land. When people say about owning their house and all the rest of it, we do die one day. And the same thing with a car. You got it for 3 years. You're still paying for that car while you've got it. So you treat it like it's yours. For that period, it is yours. Who's going to question that? So you should try to take ownership in your own mind that this isn't a hire car. This is not a car that's their car, so I'm looking after their car. You're looking after your car, and you need to treat it that way. So that's the first thing. Make sure repairs are done properly when you put it into the body shop, or it's been done on somebody else's insurance. If you get it delivered back and they bring it back and you come home from work at night, then have a look. Don't sign and accept that vehicle back from the body shop unless it's done right. And in fact, before you become an awkward customer to the body shop, when the car goes to the body shop, give them a ring. Hi there, you've got my car coming in tomorrow. It's a lease car. I will be checking it. I hope you don't mind me saying this right now, but I will be checking it when I get it back. So can you make sure, John Smith, who runs the body shop, that mine's done right? Because if not, it will be straight back on that lorry and back to you in the nicest possible way. And when you check it, if you're not somebody who knows what a front wing is against a back bumper or a clay bar, then take it to the body shop that can have a look at it. There's plenty of body shops out there that you can just pull it up, take it from there, go to a body shop that's recommended and say, I've just had this done. So for those of you listening to this who are in Leeds, we're in Chelmsford, you could pop in our place, but you don't want to pop in our place if you live in Leeds. But if you're in Leeds and you've just collected it from the body shop, or you're about to collect it, you want to know what to look for, take it straight to a place around the corner and say, look, I've just collected this. I'm not going to tell you where I got it from, but can you check to see if you think it's okay? Or go and see somebody who does know. There's plenty of people in the office, plenty of people around that say, I'll have a look at it for you. Make sure you qualify who they are. You don't want somebody who we talked about earlier who's an expert that isn't. Basically, you want the opinion on whether that body shop and the colours match. There's no obvious signs of repair. Get your guideline, it's in there. All right, so that's the first bit of advice. The second bit is that if there's an issue with it and you're not sure, if you've got a fleet manager or you need to get it checked out, get it to the dealer or whatever. I know we all say that, but it's got to go for a service, get it in for servicing and check it, because you might have signed a disclaimer saying, or something to say you're happy with it, but it doesn't mean that you can't go back to that body shop and say, look, this isn't right, it's on your books. I had it repaired 6 months ago. I've been to the dealer, they were servicing it. They've said that handle isn't the right colour or whatever. I need it rectified. Because treat it like it's your car and you have to give it back. The next thing is when you're coming to actually return it, there's plenty of help and advice from the lease companies. You can call them. They're not sitting there with a clipboard out waiting for you to call saying, you've just told me you got a dent. We're going to write that down. It's in their interest for you to be happy. Most of the time they've got helplines and they'll send you links to information that you can read to see whether it's acceptable or not. Most of the time it's obvious to you, if it's somewhere and you haven't seen it, we'll come to that in a minute. But let's say that you contact your lease company, that most of the time they'll give you how the procedure works when they're taking the car. So whether they'll send out an inspector, sometimes they'll do an inspection for you then to decide what you're going to do, and then they send somebody out to collect it a week later. Or if they take the car away, and then what happens after that? Do they take it back to the compound and check it and then bill you? Because even that information can be useful to you when you're coming up for return. So let's say you've looked after the car, but it's a bit dirty, and you're coming up to return. You've got a scuff and a dent and a few bits and pieces. I don't really know about many independent companies, but you know, we are an independent. We're in Essex. We do an inspection service. It's independent. We take the photographs. So if you did give the car back, you can say, yeah, but I did have it checked, and there are ABC. I've seen you charge me for that. I think you might be being unreasonable. You've actually got something to make reference to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a podcast that will go out throughout the world, and other parts of the world I know very similar rules. So I'd be very reluctant to take it to all and sundry, Dent men, smart repair men, all of those people. I wouldn't take it to them for their opinion. Take it for them to do what it is you want them to do, and make sure they're qualified to do it.
But ideally, what you want to do is realistically, you want to contact the lease company and find out what
are their rules.
What their rules, yeah.
Yeah, and do those.
Yeah.
And also someone will give you a matrix of charges. So you can hold the thing in your hand. I mean, we had a customer recently, had a scuff under the bumper, and to repair that scuff properly would have meant the bumper had to come off. So that would have been £250, £300. He called the lease company, said, what would I expect for that? They sent him the leaflet, they sent him the information to look at, and we quite obviously see that the max charge for that would be 166. So if he did get charged, he might have gone under the threshold, it would have been 166. So in his instance,
it'd be better to return it with
just give it back. But one caveat to that: don't all look under into the scuff and then go, "Oh yeah, that's fine," and it'll be 166. You need to check that it's not cracked or damaged. Yeah. Because a scuff is something different to, you've gone, and we've all done it. We can all relate to it. The multi-story moment when you go, and you try and you think, I don't know what of it, get out, and it's all fine. Well, that's probably because something's cracked under the bumper, and it looked fine, but it's actually. So when let's go back to the giving it and their guidelines, giving it back and the guidelines. An easy way to check a car is two people check it. One person's got the pen and paper. And then they've got, in the BVLRA or in your lease things, they give you a checklist. A lot of them do, So you'll actually go round the car. One's holding the check list and the other one's going round on their hands and knees. It's not rocket science. Under bumper, is there any scuffs or cracks? Yeah. Front wing, is there any scratches? Is there any dents? Yes or no? Once you've got a list then of bits and pieces on there, like, there is a scuff on the mirror, you might be able to go down to the Halfords and get some T-cut and a bit of touch-up, and you could save yourself some money, because sometimes there could be a scratch on a panel. Is a scratch acceptable, yes or no? Well, an inspector's not going to have a buffing machine in their hand and go, is that buffable, is that going to come off? They're just going to say, yes, there's a scratch. So you could get your T-cut and give it a little polish, and then get the scratch 80% better, and that could turn that into no, it's not a respray of a panel price, to yes, it is a panel price, and you got £250. Yeah, and on that checklist, by the way, make sure you check your locking wheel nut and your spare key.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, because they're on there, and also a couple of other pointers here while we're on it. The correct tyres. Yeah, people do this. I don't know, the tyre firms are drilled on this. Yeah, mate, a Bridgestone, yeah. These Carno Mungongos are the same as Bridgestones, they're made in the same factory. Of course they are, The Carlos Mundongos are $79.95. The Bridgestones are $179.95. You're giving, you've got 5 months left on the lease. What are you going to go for, madam? Well, the ones I'm going to go for are the cheapest ones. Yeah, well, no. You need to put acceptable tyres like for like. Be reasonable. The car's been provided with Bridgestones on it for a reason. So, you left, again, check with your lease company, check what the guidelines are, what they say is acceptable before you go, yes.
Yeah.
Some lease deals, you get the tyres in with a deal, so you're going to get the best ones you can. But of course, if they're not in with a deal and you're responsible for changing those tyres, then, make sure you don't put the ones that are the cheapest on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, so is there an abort mission charge? So cover that.
Right, what we're talking about there, abort mission. So, okay, so lease company comes round, they check the car, it's just got to go back, they send an inspector out, and my God, they've given you like £1,873, and you wasn't expecting that. What you want to know before that moment happens is, so let's assume you haven't done any of the things that we just suggested, checked it and everything else, but maybe you have checked it, or maybe you're just not in a position to do that. So you've got a bill in front of you. Ask the lease company before they come round, so they're going to ring you, you're going to ring them, say, arrange for it. If that car's collected and they have sent an inspector out, what's it going to cost if I say leave it there and I'll lease it for another month? So what I mean by that is they might say, well, okay, another month's charges are your 179 for another month, whatever that is. But the abort mission is another £159. We've got to get another guy out to collect it. You have it another month. So, if you've got £1,972 sticking up your kilt, then you're going to say, I think I'll take the abort mission. What I mean by that is I'll have it another month and get the driver back out in a month's time, and then I better get the thing sorted.
Yeah.
And then it isn't a case of going around getting everything done the cheapest. It's making a decision whether you claim on your insurance for some things, whether you go back to a previous bodywork company and say, look, you've repaired that, it's on your system, and the bumper, they've just flagged it, it's not in line, or whatever these things are. I mean, you're doing things retrospectively, but at least you got the chance to do it. If there isn't an abort mission charge because the car goes back, then you can't do it.
Yeah.
They check it back at base, then you can't do it.
So they send out an inspector out, or do they just send a driver out when they collect it?
That's the question you want to ask them. So some lease companies will send an inspector out that will talk to you about your car and inspect it basically, and then tell you what they think. When they send a driver out, what I will also tell you is a driver is somebody who's probably not earning an awful lot of money. There's no disrespect to drivers, but
you just want to get the car on and go.
That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So what they do, and I've met loads of them, they go, yeah, just sign there. Actually, I could start that as a new song, couldn't I? Yeah, just sign there. Yeah. So what he's doing is saying to you yes to anything you want to say yes to. Won't I be getting is my car okay? Yes. I'm not going to get charged. I think you'll be fine, whatever. But they just sign there is what they say. So what I'd advise you to do is actually look at what you're signing. Is there a dent there? Is there a scratch there? He's not actually looking for loads of scratches so he can charge you. What he's actually doing, he's got his own agenda. He just wants to get home. Yeah. He wants to take that car, collect another 7, get his money, go home. Because what he's got to do is drive that back to a compound and get straight back on the train, go and get another one.
Yeah.
So, most of the time he doesn't get a lift. It makes more sense for them to send him down for Derby or wherever he's coming from. Yeah. So he's gonna want to try and please you because he just wants you to sign it and you go. And if he says, oh, well, actually, yes, we will be charging you. I've just done one there last week I heard of, £2,159. Then you're going to be all over him like a rash, aren't you? Oh my God, what about mine? Yeah. I'm not, that's not a dent. You could stand over here, So they've done that once, and then, so now they take the easy route. And, I'm not saying that about every single driver, but it's just my experience.
Yeah, so let's say that I did get a £2,159 charge. Can I appeal that? Is there actually an appeal process to it?
Yes, there is. I don't know an awful lot about the appeal process. I know enough. I know that the BVLRA people are there to contact. I would say to you that if you haven't checked it, you haven't got photographs, you haven't done a lot, all you're really doing is arguing what the costs are for the damage that they've got the photos of. Because you can't actually say that wasn't there because you haven't got any proof unless you have had it inspected or you've inspected it and wrote that stuff down and documented it. And that's something we do. But obviously, if you haven't done that, then realistically, you're not actually asking them to judge whether it's fair or not. What you're actually asking is the figures fair? Because they've got the photographs already.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the car. It's already been auctioned, but by this time it's gone.
And
There's new bloke driving
But can I
it.
argue that?
You can argue it, and there is an independent process. You know, the guidelines will allow you to do that, and the arbitration process is the right word, I suppose. You go to the BVLRA, and then they've got a process, and
So the governing body will oversee it,
and I'll be honest with you, it's not something I've actually followed for. I've spoken to people that say I will. I think I think you have to pay something towards it. But to be honest with you, my experience is most of the time people are jumping up and down. It's too late. Yeah. You've given it back, and usually, and what I will say is, if you do it properly, most of the time you'll be fine.
Yeah. So like saying things like, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, or I'll never lease a car a car again. Does that ever carry any weight? Or
no. Most lease companies are big enough to. It's not big enough.
Okay then. No worries. Thank you, sir. Bye.
No. Well, I'll take the business elsewhere. Well, they're not. You're talking to somebody who's in the return department, and actually, although they should be customer orientated, you know, if you listen to the top people in the company, everyone's part of the business. But the reality is that the people that are collecting the cars, or even involved in the whole return process, even the people you phone on reception, are not involved in the sales or the deals.
Yeah, and have no weight in the business anyway, and have no influence at all. So it's pointless even saying that to these people, because it's not gonna mean anything to them.
Means nothing, and you know, and they might even say, "Oh my God, please don't." You know, we'd love you to stay, but actually, does that get them any? You know, and the last question, point.
You might even have a driver that says, "Well, I don't blame you, madam, for 2,159 quid. I'll bleed and go back."
I'd go. The last bit was, "I'll never lease a car again."
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you then. Okay, so there's big circle here. This one you'll like. So you're never going to lease a car again. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be held accountable. Well, okay, so you buy a car. Yeah, so how long are you going to own it, roughly? Most people, maybe 3 years, you know, maybe the similar period. Yeah. Maybe a bit longer, maybe not. I don't know. But, you know, so you're going to go to the dealers and trade it in then, yeah? A dealer's going to do the same thing, you know. A dealer's got to take it in. They're just buying it from you and not buying it from the auction. Yeah. They're going to want to qualify.
If it's your car, you would actually go and get it looking the best you can to get the best value for it.
Yes, that's the fair. Yeah, you've got it in one. Yeah. But you know, so the point to make here is, I'll never lease a car again. So that means when somebody dents my car, it doesn't matter then, because it's mine. Well, actually, it does. You know, because the reality is, if you're going to trade it in at the dealership, or if you're going to sell it privately. You know, if you look in the auto trader now, car dented and scratched, none of these things were my fault. I didn't lease a car last time.
Yeah.
I leased a car last time. This time I've decided to sell it myself, and I've got a dozen dents round it. Will you come and buy it and give me a fair price? So, you know, the answer is, if you're leasing a car, it's just the way you pay for it. You need to pay for it. And if you want to pay for all the damage, you know, you want to damage it, pay for it all. It's only a money thing. Yeah. You know, whether you lease it or not, or which way you do it, if it's only money, then...
However way you're going to look at it, it needs to be repaired if it's going to be
back to a lease. If you want to save money.
And if you want to save money. And if you want to get the best... Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, I mean, that, like I said at the beginning, that is a minefield. The whole lease return arena is a minefield, but I think Gary's covered a lot of really important facts and topics around this, and tried in the short time that we've got in this hour to give as much information to you, so you're fully informed of knowing what to do, what the processes are, and what the best way to deal with your car if you have got a lease car and you're returning it. So I know that you are a BVR LA inspector. So how would they book in if they're in the Essex area? How can they book in? Or if they're outside of the area and they want to bring it to you, how can they book in and see you, and when would be a good time to do it?
I'll bullet point it quickly. If you're not in our area, then you know, we're in their southeast, then I will give you 5 bits of bullet points. We'll see if there's 5. First off, manage your car like it is your car. It is your car from the beginning. Check it over and make sure you look after it. Make sure the body shop repairs, number 2, any repairs you have done are correct. Servicing's done, the tyres are correct and all of that stuff. Be aware that you don't know your car if you're not cleaning it at weekends. Make an effort to clean your car. Good exercise. Look after your car, and that will pay you dividends. And don't take advice from people that don't understand what they're talking about. It's not that they're trying to... Even some of you think, oh, well, you would say do the wheels. Well, they would, maybe, if they're a wheel guy. But the reality is they probably have done lots of lease cars before and they think that that's what you do. Because otherwise you might get stung and charged. Well, they're not wrong. You may got charged for those wheels, but the reality is the figure's similar. So be aware of the charges, and be aware of what the really charges. The most expensive are serious charges, damage you didn't know about, cracked bumpers, damage that misaligned panels, and previous repairs, and and also take advice from the lease companies. Talk to them, get the guidelines, read up. If you're not good at reading up on all this stuff, get someone else who could help you. Check the car before it goes back properly. 2 people need to do that. Plenty of space around it, plenty of light. Get the get the pen, get the checkboard. And then when you've got what you've done right or wrong, then go about it in a professional manner. Sometimes you can send photographs to the lease company. Sometimes you can find out whether or not the inspector's going to come out and what they're going to charge. There's a matrix of charges sometimes as well. You can say there's a dent, that should be that. And you've also got a bit of an argument when you give it back. One of the things as well is when you give the car back, sometimes lease companies are a little bit more forgiving. If you said, well, I've got charged for 3 wheels, so take some photographs. If you can't come to us, take some photographs of all these things as well. Get your mobile phone, bum, 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 and then you've got a load of records yourself, so that you can say, well, I did take photographs of the wheels. I don't want to be funny, but one of those wheels wasn't that bad. Would you let me off? And some lease companies will say, all right, then if you pay now, then we'll let you off the other 2. So okay. So you want to come to us. Let me tell you what we do. Give us a call. We do an inspection. At the moment, the charge is only £50, including VAT. It takes just over half an hour to do it. So you need to get the car clean before you come to us. Bring it in. We check it with you, so you know exactly what you're looking at. We look at it with you. We load it up on our system, so you've got a record of it. We do photographs. We do that together. We even do a video. If we do the little rectification things, we can't repair everything, but we can send you in the direction and give you the advice on what to do's. If there are bits and pieces that you're not sure of, you can often ring the lease company. As I said earlier, Guy rang recently and found out he was going to get charged a lot less than he otherwise would have done if he'd have got it repaired. So he's gone to the trouble of getting it all done when actually he could have just returned it. That's often the case. People get all the wrong things repaired. Remember, if you're going to get something repaired, don't be getting it done by somebody who can't repair it properly. Yeah. There's a lot of arguments out there between body shops and smart repairs, and rightly so, because the smart repair people are often being persuaded by people that want to get things done cheaper to do more than they can do, and often they like humans, they often can be persuaded, and therefore you get charged double. So if you want to get it to us here in Essex, just give us a call, or you can send a WhatsApp video if you want. Go on there, contact us.
Yeah, which is www.newagain.co.uk.
Yeah, newagain.co.uk. And, we've got some helpful advice and videos on our website as well. Or, listen to this podcast again with your other half and get out there and roll your sleeves up.
Absolutely. And so great. So thank you very much, Gary. You've been in a wealth of knowledge as per usual. So we're going to end the podcast now. Again, thanks to Gary for imparting all of his knowledge. We'll be back again with another episode of the New Again podcast with another topic which will be relevant to you car users and you car enthusiasts. So this is me signing off. My name is Stephen Jakes, and good night, Gary.
Good night. Nice to talk to you all.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you and speaking to you again on the New Again podcast. Goodbye.